Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back, and let's chat about what is going on up in the stars above. I told you it was going to be a week, didn't I? On Monday, when I was on air, I looked ahead at the week's astrology, and I even pinpointed the 6th as a day to watch out for. And look what happened. At least here in the United States, all HEQQ broke loose. And it was the byproduct of a lot of energy that had been building for a while. And it came out in a watershed moment. I think it's probably one of those moments, as I heard other news commentators say, that we will always remember where we were when we heard the news that the Capitol was under siege. So, in the context of that day and what comes next, right? In the context of that crazy day, that craziness that was sort of, if you almost can look at it like the culmination point of the energy that had been building up since June of this last year, then you can see in sort of retrospect that Mars that day, sitting at the 29th degree of Aries, was about to deliver a punch. It was about to deliver a blow or a blow up, an explosion, a conflict, and a confrontation. The 29th degree is always a karmic degree. It is always very affective. It pushes something to happen. And it doesn't always have to be a riot or some kind of insurrection. It isn't usually that. But given the way that the energies had been building through the previous 6 months since Mars moved into Aries and his retrograde period that he spent, and the fact that he is and was in a square through most of the late summer and fall to Saturn. And now that Saturn and Jupiter have moved into Aquarius, there's the square from those two to Mars or to Uranus in Taurus. So it was like the time was ripe for something to happen. And all we need is one fomenter out there to suggest that something happen. And the vibe picked up by the people and moved on out into the world. So what did we learn from all of this? I dare say it may take us a while yet to really unpack the impact of everything that has happened over the last couple of days. Now, today, as we look at the astrology of the day, what we see is the moon in Scorpio, a very powerful sign, a sign whose one major theme that it grapples with is forgiveness. So the moon emotionally in a sign that grapples with forgiveness. And how do we as a people, as a nation, as a world even, go about the process of forgiveness? Big theme there, as well as the theme of transformation, as the moon in Scorpio really takes us into that life-death struggle, the rebirth and the regeneration energies, something passing away so that something else can come in. And releasing us. Release is another key word here for the moon in Scorpio. Releasing that emotion, a release of the grievances of all the things that have been held and, compacted within us, and the resentments, right? The power struggles and the jealousies and the you can, almost every word that you can think of that is a negative aspect can happen in the context of a moon in Scorpio, holding on to all of that negativity. And the high side, the potential, is the release of all of that and the way being shown to something new, right? Release, forgiveness, transformation, change, letting go of power struggles, reclaiming our personal power, and letting go of resentments, right? Letting them go. That is now, at the time of that insurrection, there really wasn't a moon in Scorpio. Oh no, not now. No, not now. And that moon, the moon at that time would have been in the later degrees of Libra, And I think what we also got to see was Libra in incredibly out of balance energy, where no longer could the scales hold in a sort of balance. It just flipped and became extraordinarily unbalanced energy. I almost guarantee you that every person, with the exception, I'm sure, of some that was involved that day, are likely shaking their heads and going, "What was I thinking? What was I doing? How did I get whipped up into this frenzy of energy and express such resentment in such a negatively powerful way?" So we have a lot going on in terms of what was happening in the moment. And actually, as astrology, I think one of the punches of astrology is that it's all very clear after the fact as to what was happening, right? When we look back at a chart of an event, you see the planets, the players that were engaged here. And so they always say hindsight is 2020. So when we look at that chart, which I did this morning, if you all want to go further into this subject, you can go to astrologyking.com, and there is an article there on the riot. And he notes that the time of the event, at the time of the event, the birth of the event, so we can write a chart up for the birth of an event as easily as we can for the birth of a baby or the birth of, a business or something like that. So the birth of the event has the star Aldebaran, which I rarely get into fixed stars, but I found this one fascinating as it's a star that represents riots. And it was on the rise, rising on the eastern horizon at the time of the riots, at the time the riots broke out or the insurrection occurred. And that was another key word of that particular star is insurrection, the more negative aspects of it. So a flashpoint in time, a negative star rising on the eastern horizon, which also happens to be the degree of the November lunar eclipse. And something coming to pass, something big and something representing an ending in a very big way. Now, not all things that happen like that are negative. I mean, sometimes it's really awesome things that happen, where things get carried away to the positive. It doesn't always show up in the negative when we have stars and planets and the moon's eclipse points are aligning like that. But I think it was one of those things that was bound to happen. It was bound to happen. And the bigger question then is, where do we go from there? Right? Where do we go from there? How do we heal as a people? How do we heal as a nation? And I don't think that we start that healing process with recriminations and blame and judgment. I think if we do that, then we're playing into the same energy, and that is not going to heal anything or prevent something like that from happening again. I think we do have to take a good hard look at the circumstances that allowed someone to rise to power that has been able to create that kind of fervor in the people. And there's not an exact parallel here, but I can't help but see the alignment to what happened during Hitler's time, right? Where people did his bidding. They did things they would never think that they would ever do, all because he was a charismatic leader and somehow was able to get to the heart of what people were angry about. And he blossomed that and turned that into a movement, right? The parallels are striking, albeit not the same, right? Not the same level. I think we're a wiser humanity at this point, and a good chunk of us really saw the handwriting on the wall. And the question now is, where do we go from here? How do we prevent this from ever happening again? How do we fix some of the very things that created the opening for someone to come in and behave such as the way the President of the United States has behaved over the last 4 years? Now, that's not to say that he's been wrong, because he came here to do a job and he's done it well. We've been stirred, we've been upset, we've been turned upside down, we've been in a tornado, we've been in flux, we've been We've been, right? We've been. And the question is now, how do we remember some of the key themes we moved into 2021 was about integrity, right? It's still a theme. It's a theme all the way through the end of February, as the nodes in our human design are sitting at the 45, which is a gate that sits on the throat center. And how do we distribute wealth appropriately? And then the south node at the gate 26, integrity, exposing corruption and exposing the darker side of things, right? The things that have been hidden from us that suddenly come to light. So we have these themes that are pulling us into a future where we can perhaps lay waste to corruption and instead install transparency. And we can go back to morality in an ethical way, not morals that are dictated to us from outside of us, but as we come together as people and we agree on what our values are and then institute the values in a way that prompts integrity, right? Integrity, transparency, letting go of corruption. And it's interesting that there is a gate in our human design. It's not activated at the moment, that speaks to corruption, and not corruption as you would think of as, dirty deeds done dirt cheap. That's not the kind of corruption, but it's a misreading of the code, and sort of what happens when you install a program perhaps on your computer and it doesn't install right. And so it's corrupt and you have to take out the program, you have to delete it and then reinstall it, uninstall, reinstall. And that may be exactly where we are right now, cutting out, excising the corruption, the corrupted information, the corrupted energy, in order to reinstall something that is more clean, more pure, more in integrity. I think it's a lesson that all of us have learned in this particular year and will continue to learn. It's not like suddenly now we're going to be transparent and there's no more corruption and there's back to integrity. It's going to be a choice that we have to make as we move forward in who we vote for, where we spend our money, how we show up ourselves personally in the world. We are going to have to, as individuals, show up in integrity. Remember, integrity isn't something that someone's dictating to you, but it's your truth. And there is a rightness, a goodness that comes from integrity, being in the truth, your truth, being in your own skin. And, one of the other biggest problems that humanity has been encountering for eons is this idea of duality. And that duality has led us into division and polarization. And we saw that plainly as well. And yet, in the aftermath, I watched almost every single senator's speech, every single representative speech for hours afterwards. It was late into the evening, actually, as I'm watching these speeches. And I was really moved by the common thread in almost everybody. I mean, there were a few that were like, oh, God, you don't get this, do you? But for the most part, people were, they were appalled. Right? Everyone was appalled that this happened, no matter where they landed on the political spectrum, no matter where their personal beliefs were. I think that there was a true sense in the nation's capital that duality in division and polarization is not serving the bigger population of the planet, of the country. So we are on a new course, right? Here we are today. With that moon in Scorpio helping us to go into the deeper places. The moon is actually in some very good aspects today, in a sextile to the sun, helping to shine a light into those darker places, in a trine to Neptune, helping us move with our hearts and with our theme of unconditional love, and a sextile to Pluto, which in a powerful sense brings us the opportunities after the square with Pluto that the moon made on Wednesday during the insurrection, to change, to transform, to rebuild, to really begin this process of healing and transforming everything that has gone before. And now we actually have some more help in that today Mercury's moving out of out of Capricorn and into Aquarius, and that's going to help change up some of the thinking processes that we are all engaged with. And Mercury will be here until March 15th for an extended period of time, because this time period between now and March 15th also includes his retrograde cycle. So we're going to have some time here, some time to look at Aquarian ideals. How do we come together as humanity? We are going to want during this period of time more information and more knowledge. We need to greet that information and that knowledge with more open-mindedness, a willingness to see the new, a willingness to engage new ideas and to be innovative. And we want to be more, it's not that we even want to be, we are being pushed to becoming more progressive and more liberal in our thoughts and in our communications. And I'm not using those words in a political tone at all. It is not about politics. It's about the entire energy field that that's being communicated to us right now from on high, if you want to think of it like being brought in from the galactic center, being telescoped into us at this moment, transmitted from on high, are progressive and liberal thoughts and communications. However, because the Mercury retrograde is sandwiched in here, we're also going to have to watch for some fragmentation in our thinking, in our speaking, and know that we're going to have maybe this reminds me of the gate 64 in human design, where we may get these wonderful downloads of opportunities and ideas and ways to do things. And then we don't quite have the epiphany part of that yet. The instruction manual didn't come with the download. So we don't know exactly what to do. So we may have some time during these next 3 months of that fragmentation, where we start thinking in one way and then we like get called back to the past. Well, how's that going to work? We may be in our minds in a way that creates more havoc. So we may have to try harder, all of us who are in the know of their human design, of how to use your mind. What's the correct use of your mind? Where is your correct decision-making apparatus? Because it's not in your mind. Right? It's not in your mind. It's not in your head. It's not in your throat. It is not even in above the neck. It's all down in the body, right? That is where our authorities lie in human design. And that might be emotional in the solar plexus. It could be the spleen, which takes us into instinct and intuition, a knowingness in the moment. It can take us into the sacral, where our bodies respond in the positive or in the negative in when something is in front of us, when we are offered an opportunity to do something or to be something. So we are going to have to be very aware of who we as individuals are in order to apply our skills and our gifts to the world in the right way. And it begins with knowing yourself, not just giving it lip service and saying, yeah, I'm a generator or I'm a projector, because that's empty if you don't know what that means to you personally, right? This isn't a time anymore. We are not able to pussyfoot around anymore. We just can't do it. There's too much riding on our future at the moment, both as a country, both as a humanity, as a planet. We are being tested like no other time in history to rise to the challenge, and we have the ability to do it. And that, again, begins with knowing yourself. And the second thing is to recognize the power of your co-creative energy in this reality, and taking a look deep within to see how is it that you have been a partner in the creation of all that is, all that you see in your world. And it takes responsibility, right? Another theme for 2021, right in our faces, right at this moment, responsibility. Right? And then the responsibility for how you respond to what is showing up in the world. Also coming to a bit of our aid is Venus moving today at the same time as Mercury into the sign of Capricorn. She will be there only until February 1st. She's not going to experience a retrograde until this next December and January, so we don't have to worry about her spending a great deal of time in any one sign. So Venus into Capricorn is a time for us to rally around our core values. What are our core values, right? What are they? Is it insurrection? Is it rioting? Is it anger? I don't believe so. I don't believe so at all. It is time with Venus and Capricorn to set the steps to be making in creating what it is that we desire. We are able to, with Venus, to very much see our values, our core values. And because Capricorn is a very practical, down to earth sign, we can take definite steps forward, right? So we have a plan and we need to step up and engage those plans, right? And those plans might be to what you personally desire. It might be engaged in your finances. It might be in your health. It might be in your relationships, your job or career. It all really depends. Where's Capricorn in your chart? Because remember, Capricorn in 2020 was playing host to Saturn, Jupiter, Pallas Athena, Pluto, and all of those conjunctions that those planets made at various times last year. Now, Venus is a latecomer to the party here. She will only encounter Pluto during her transit this time, but in a way, she's sort of helping us to see, clearing away the debris, right? The debris, what's left there that we no longer need, that's in our way, so that we can see our path ahead, our path forward. It is time for us to connect to what is enduring, right? What is enduring in our relationships, in our health, and in our world at large. And what is an enduring vision that you may have for what you want to do or who you want to be or where you want to go and all of that. So Venus for the next few weeks, pushing us into really living our values. You could say she's pushing us into walking our talk and talking our walk. I think we can get away with saying that. So Venus, Mercury, both personal planets, because they're inner planets. Mars, Venus, Mercury, the moon, the sun are all personal planets. So whenever they're activated or whatever they're activating comes home to roost, right? It sits right here with you individually. And so these are things that are up to you to enact in your life, up to you to discover. What does it mean to you to have values? What are your values? What does it mean to be progressive and liberal in terms of a world that's moving in that direction, but with a planet that's personally taking you into your mind and into your communication? How do you speak to that new world? And what do you think about? Are you focused on all that has happened in the past, or are you ready to let the past go and to move squarely forward into a future, taking the best of the past? I'm not saying leave it all. Take what you've learned, take where your heart has been, and bring it forward so that we can step up to a more progressive and liberal future. Again, not a political statement. These are just energies, right? Energies of moving forward, of taking care of one another, right? All right. I'm going to step over to YouTube real quickly and say good morning to everybody. And I missed you guys. I have to tell you, I'm sort of at odds with myself over what I've been doing in terms of coming on Mondays and Fridays, because I feel out of sorts. I don't know what all of that means yet. Again, I'm going to have to do the same thing as you all, looking at my core values, what's important to me, what's not important, and going, into new territory. So good morning, Tom, and good morning, Jess. Happy Friday. J-Lo, hello to you. Asa, good morning. Monique Alexander, good morning. And Christine Buckingham, good morning. And she says, grief. Good morning, all. Grief. I think, yeah, there's that energy out there. Yes, Christine says Astrology King is a great channel too. I like his how can I say this? I like his thinking, but he also often moves more toward the negative, the more, it's not even that really. But anyway, I love going there to just get a feel from the more masculine side, what things are, what's going on. JLo says, yes, for some reason I have been into the fixed stars for a while, but when I speak of them, I seem a bit crazy. Well, the fixed stars, actually, that the astrology of the fixed stars goes back a ways, right? Because our ancients could see the fixed stars, right? They watched the night sky, and there were always the stars that they could look at. So certain stars were always there against the backdrop of the night. So Aldebaran, which was the fixed star that happened to be on the horizon at the time of the riot starting, that star has some very negative connotations. And as the ancients watched this star in action, it seemed to cause upheavals in their governments and changeovers in their politics and in their social structures. So the wisdom that we have on the fixed stars is actually probably more ancient than what we have as wisdom on the planets. And of course, on the asteroids and the newer trans-Neptunian objects that we use now. So it's interesting, JLo, because that has such a very more stable and longevity to it that might be very appealing to some people. Ursula, good morning. Loanne, hello to you. Elisa, good morning. Tammy Smith, hello there. Debbie Tibbetts Tumiel, good morning, my friend. Ursula says, I personally appreciate your laser beam focus today and open heart sharing. It is utterly fascinating how the cosmos is alive on Earth, real and true. And Ursula, thank you very much for that. No more pussyfooting, lion's feet time. Exactly. Jennifer Peachy, good morning. Coach Michael, hello. And Kamala, good morning to you. Christine says, fixed stars are very interesting. Many of us enjoy learning about them too, JLo. Well, that gives me some ideas for things that we can talk about in the future for my own learning, because I've pretty much ignored them. I know they're there, and I love it when someone says something like, oh, fixed star, Sirius. I mean, lots of spiritual beliefs kind of go around Sirius, right? Sirius, the dog star, which was very activated in the ancient Egyptian times, as the rising of the dog star represented the time the Nile would flood. So it was sort of a harbinger of time to watch out now, because the Nile may flood. And actually, they look forward to the Nile flooding because it brought fertility to the Nile Valley. So the fixed stars have a history of being very important in astrology and in the cultures and societies of the past. So if we look to the past for positive things, and I think we should, then that's one of the things that we might look to the past for, that we can bring forward into the now, that might help us see the signs on the wall for what comes next. So there are a couple of other transit things happening today that I want to talk about before I go into Saturday. Today, we also have the sun in a sextile to Neptune. So we had the moon in a sextile to the sun, the moon in a trine to Neptune, and now we have the sun in a sextile to Neptune. And it is all about looking for the deeper meaning of things. We're humans, right? We do want to know why, how. We are always looking at the under story or the behind the scenes story. It's a part of who we are. With the moon in Scorpio, it's also one of those things that we want to become more investigative. We want to know the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And the truth is sometimes hard to find because it's defined by the person that's experiencing it. And we have experienced the reality of varied truths in at least the US, but I would imagine the whole world is feeling this too, throughout the last several years, as news and information is so easily accessible. But Neptune's involved here, folks, and it means that we don't get the truth, or at least we have to be very judicious in where we get the truth. And I had an extraordinary experience with my son last night. We were chatting about all of these different things that had happened. And we were on FaceTime, so I could see, everything that was going on. And on the wall in his bedroom is this huge Trump sign, right? This big flag. I mean, it takes up the whole wall. It was like a banner or something that he'd gotten, or, like the flags that you see people flying that said Trump, make America great again. And I'm like, oh my God, Wesley, take that down and burn it. And he started laughing at me. And of course, I was only half kidding, half, serious. I mean, certainly you are free to believe whatever you want to believe. And he goes, oh, Mom, did you hear the latest? And I said, oh no, what's this? And it was the Rothschilds, which is an old moneyed family, a power broker, even in the establishment here of the United States. And there are lots of evidence to show that they were instigating the Federal Reserve. And anyway, I don't want to get into all of that. But this thing about the Rothschilds, and back in 2015, they patented the coronavirus test and all of the things that they would use now for the coronavirus testing. So that tells you, Mom, that the coronavirus was planned back in 2015. And I went, okay, where's the article? So he said, Google Rothschilds coronavirus patent. So I did. I thought, okay, I'm going to be open-minded. I mean, I'm rejecting it. I can feel it inside of me. I'm totally rejecting that as a truth, but I'm going to look at it because, right, I want to be open-minded. I just told you all it's time to be open-minded and willing to engage new ideas. So, okay, I'm going to look at this. So I did, and I couldn't find the article. All I could find was all of the evidence from Reuters and from other news agencies debunking that very myth, a myth that I didn't even know existed until my son brought it to me. So I copied and pasted the different links and I said, do you mean these articles? And he goes, oh. He said, I didn't bother to fact check it. I didn't do my due diligence, Mom. I did not fact check these things. And so there we have that, right? There's this thing called fact checking, right? Fact check, people. Go look and see if it's really true. And even if the mind's ability to look for information and fact checking is confusing, which it's going to be because Neptune's involved here, then go to your heart. What does your heart say? What does your heart say? Stop listening and relying only on the mind, because there are other centers in your body that hold the truth. Your heart holds the truth. Your solar plexus holds the truth. So even though the mind wants to activate and say, this is information, and look, it's right here, it says that, where's that coming from? Somebody else's delusional state. You've got to do the fact checking and looking at more than just one source if you're going to follow your mind. But if you're going to follow your heart and your solar plexus, they will give you a truth before the mind ever gets to a truth. So it was a huge lesson, right? For him, it was a lesson for me to really, because initially my mind was in rejection of that, right? I'm like, no way, is that true? But maybe it is. I'm going to check it and see. And then but my body was telling me, nah, not true, not true. So right now we are, all of us, looking for meaning, looking for the deeper truths, and maybe we're finding it. But I doubt that we're going to find it by reading a story and taking it for the God's honest truth without looking at the wider spectrum of where the news is coming from, who is providing that news, and what's in it for them, right? There's always that WIFM, what's in it for them. Well, WIFM is what's in it for me, but what's in it for them, right? To be passing on information. So we have to be really good detectives in this period of time that comes up. And we also don't want to get caught up in the information out there that creates a closed mind, right? It creates this thing that we call in human design certainty that 50% of you do not have, but think you do. And the other 50% of you who are certain think you're certain about something, but you never take the time to really go look it out, check it out. Unless, of course, you're a first line profile, then you're doing all kinds of investigative stuff. So we have to be very careful as we go forward about what we are focusing our thoughts on, what information we are letting in, and what are we believing, because the state of delusion is pretty powerful right now, has been for a long time. But the sun in a sextile to Neptune also allows us to elevate our intuition and our imagination. We get to look beyond, we get to use other facilities that we have, other faculties built in to us to be able to discern truth. It's about discernment. And then, are we in sync with the universe? Great question here. With the sun shining a very powerful light on all things in the dark, and the moon also shining on things in the dark. Are we in sync? Are you in sync with what the universal energies are leading us to? Are you in sync with responsibility? Are you in sync with truth? Are you in sync with integrity? Are you in sync with moving forward with freedom? So those are the universal energies we have, right? So are we in sync with them, or aren't we? That's a question. We also have Mercury in a square to Mars today. That was also activated Wednesday, but from a different place. On Wednesday, during that insurrection time, it was actually squaring from the sign of Capricorn. And so it wasn't as close of a square, but Mercury was transiting again through a 29th degree, right? The 29th degree, but of Capricorn, not Aquarius. And that is also a sensitive degree. And it brings up all of the revolutionary sort of changes that had been occurring over the past year. It just sort of brought it all to a head in what ends up being a square, a challenge, an explosion, a conflict, right? Anytime Mercury or any planet comes into a square with Mars, there's always the opportunity for agitation and a sort of heightened confrontational energy. And so it was activated definitely on Wednesday, but the actual square happens today. Remember, we have the time coming, then we have the exact, and then we have the passing of that transit. So we are still in that transit. So we must watch out for impulsivity, for reactivity, reactionary energy versus responsibility, right? Responsibility. All right, that's it for today. Saturday's energy. So we have a void of course moon that occurs tonight, 5:58 p.m. my time. So that's going to be what, 8:58 p.m. for those of you on the East Coast. And that will break at 3:15 a.m. my time, 6:15 a.m. for those of you on the East. And so essentially when we wake up Saturday morning, the moon will be in Sagittarius, and it comes into such lovely energy with Mercury, with Saturn, and with Jupiter that I think Saturday, all in all, is a really good day. Maybe, we're feeling a little more optimistic. We're feeling a little more like looking forward to the future. Sextiles bring up the better energies, right? The more energies of possibilities, right? Possibilities are another theme for 2021. So sextiles make a smoother flow of the gifts and talents between planets. So the moon's emotions with Mercury's mind, the moon's emotions with Saturn, Saturn's duty and responsibility, and also the moon's emotions with Jupiter's tendency to be generous and magnanimous. The only caution, I guess, then for the weekend or for Saturday is to keep everything in perspective and keep it proportional. Right? That's always kind of difficult when we have really good energies going with Jupiter things can tend to get a little bit out of control. Also tomorrow, we have a Venus trine Mars. Now we have Venus in Capricorn. She's in an earth sign, and we have Mars now in Taurus, heading to a conjunction with Uranus. That is, I'm looking forward to that. And that is building up a camaraderie then between the divine feminine embodied in Venus and the divine masculine embodied in Mars. So what we have is an increase in our creativity for the weekend. Even today, this is, I think, now that Venus is in Capricorn, let's see, what time does she move into Capricorn today? Do we have that? Venus moves into Capricorn at 7:41 a.m. So she's already in Capricorn. So we already have this increase in our creative abilities or in creativity, the coming together of those two. You could think of them as almost two hemispheres of your brain coming together to work creatively together. It does increase competition, but in a more friendly way, sort of, jovial pursuit of competition. This is also a time that our desire to pursue what we want is triggered or heightened. So we have the possibility that we desire something and we're tired of waiting for it. So we take the steps to move forward toward that. Remember, these two are in earth signs. Earth signs favor a plan, practical step-by-step motion towards something. So remember that. We also have a more closeness in our relationships when these two come together in this positive of a state that might bring more romance to your relationships, an ease being with one another. Even if they're people that you don't know all that well, you may feel very comfortable with one another. That is our Venus trine Mars. Now, also tomorrow, later in the day, Mercury will come into a conjunction with Saturn. Now, that one is where the atmosphere kind of turns at that point in time. If everything's been happy-go-lucky during this part of the day, I don't even know what time that happens. I didn't check that out, but you'll know it because the energy may shift and becomes more serious as our minds turn toward more serious topics. Whether that's a news story that we're in reaction to, whether it's something that happens in our own families, whether it's just mood energy that changes, the atmosphere becomes a little more serious during the day tomorrow as well. But the planet Mercury, when he comes into a conjunction with Saturn, also gives us a dose of concentration and focus energy, where at other times maybe you're feeling a little scattered, a little, kind of affected by the emotional field. We can become very much more focused when Mercury conjuncts Saturn, but we may also feel like we want to get away from people. We might feel more melancholic. Don't forget that that is one of the things that leads us to creative energy, right? We may have been feeling the creative burst with Venus trine Mars, and then we go into the womb where we couldn't quite see, maybe all the creative things weren't happening yet. So we go into a state of quiet and solitude or withdrawal at some point to be able to have the space for creation of a different sort, not the outward creation, but the inward creation. That too will shift. That always shifts, right? Mercury moves fast enough that he will move beyond Saturn, and that will only be at best a few hours, perhaps a day, where you might feel that energy. This is a setup for thinking practically, right? Allowing us to move forward with new projects and new ideas. Mercury newly in Aquarius and Saturn fairly newly in Aquarius, looking at the landscape and going, what more is possible? What more can we do? How can we build this? How can we create something that of more lasting, something more lasting that is more current? So we have some really good energies, but for some, it might feel a little heavy. So just being aware of that for tomorrow. Then on Sunday, literally a quiet day on Sunday, giving us time to recoup, to reestablish ourselves. There is a moon that day squaring Neptune, but that tends to bring our emotions closer to our unconditional love kind of field. So that usually challenges us to love more fully. So I don't see that one as particularly negative, but the moon will be in Sagittarius that day, connected to Jupiter. So we do still need to watch that we're not overdoing things, that we aren't so cemented in our beliefs that we can't see that there are other truths that are upon us, and that there is a new pathway forward. Sagittarius, the explorer, whose arrows are aimed at the galactic center. There's where your real truth is, right? Not the truths that you're reading on all of your different websites or your different books or periodicals. The real truth lies in the galactic center, the heart of the universe. So we'll have that as an opportunity as we get into the beginning of next week as well. In fact, It may even be late on Sunday and early into Monday where the moon actually conjuncts the galactic center. Maybe in our dreams, something is revealed to us during that period of time. All right. So, Asa, if you're out there, questions? I haven't really looked at my phone here. Nope, I don't see anything. Okay, so if you guys have questions, definitely what I do. I don't know how that happened. There we go. So if you have questions, please let me know. I'm going to go step over here, look at any other comments. Good morning, Leilani. Haven't seen you in a while. It's great to see you. J-Lo says, I love looking through an encyclopedia. They cannot rewrite those if we find an old one. Oh, I love those encyclopedias. When I was a kid, I had a whole set of them, several sets, actually. I'm not even sure how that happened, but I learned lots about math. I used to just sit down like, okay, what letter do I want today? G? Okay, G. So I would look it up and see everything I could read about G things. Asa, welcome home at Jazeera. Good morning from New Zealand. Nice to see you. Christine says, maybe a card for the group, please. Oh, yes, I think that's a great idea, but I still have some other things to share first. We haven't really talked about human design too much. So what does that say? We do have the group on Facebook, Janet, as you can always swing by there. Yes, you can do that. The Living Astrology community page. And I love all the sharing that goes on there. Let's take a look before I run out of time this morning, because I do want to do a card for the collective. Let's take a look at what's going on in our human design, because we haven't really looked there yet. But we are in the middle of a human design week. Let me share my screen so you guys can see that. There we go. We're actually in week 2 of January, from January 5th through 10th. So we're kind of right smack in the middle there. This is a week about trusting in the divine for inspiration and timing. Anybody care to comment on that? We have the sun at the gate 54, divine inspiration. This is a gate that is sitting on the root center, the very bottom center. In the root center in human design, you could sort of see it. No, this is the sacral. It would be one below that. The gate 54 is a kind of the gate of a push that pushes us out into the world. In traditional traditional human design, it's called the gate of ambition, the gate of goals, the gate of drive. In quantum human design, it is called the gate of divine inspiration. And I always think of this gate as interesting because it is the embarkation of the hero's quest, right? The hero's journey that we all take. And it is, everybody has the gate 54. Right now, it happens to be defined for everyone. If you have it defined, you'll have it colored in, whether it's colored in all the way across or just halfway, by either red or black or striped. If it's a gate that's white, then right now it means that you are getting a push, right, to get out there, to become a conduit for divine inspiration to flow through you and not for you to force things to happen. In the gene keys, this is such a lovely hologram of shadow of greed. That is so last century, last decade. That decade died on December 21st as we opened up with a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 Aquarius, letting go all of the previously earthy conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn that had us, ultimately scrabbling out a living and scrambling for things, right? Very resource oriented. Now we can let go of this greed shadow and we can move into aspiring for something greater, for, having hope and being able to see a bigger picture. And ultimately in the Siddhi, that gate brings us ascension energy, right? Moving up. And the earth always brings us into a shadow, and or not a shadow, kind of sets a tone for the evolution. Like laying down a challenge to us, right? And the challenge is at the gate 53. That is about starting new things, starting something new. It is an initiating energy that then allows the idea to flow with right timing. Also on the root center, but moving up toward the sacral. It's that impulse, right? The root center in human design is a center for pressure, and the pressure is for us to do. And it can go wrong and become a source of burnout for us, but it can also be the impetus, that just push that you need to get out of the nest, to spread your wings and fly, right? So the gate 53 and the gate 54 come together to allow a new beginning and to allow a push, if you will, into becoming a conduit for the divine. And that's our jobs, all of us here. We came here to walk the path of the planet for the divine, right? For a higher purpose. The shadow here is immaturity. I was sitting with that for a minute because that shadow is an interesting one, because everything in a new beginning is immature. So I don't know that we can help it, right? Because even if we are here in the beginning of a new cycle of time, with Jupiter and Saturn having been, so recently moved into the sign of Aquarius, something new is upon us. But there's an immaturity to that at this point. The shadow here, we don't know what to do with it yet. We don't know where it's going. Where's it going to take us? We won't know that until we begin to co-create that reality through the gift of expansion, where we take the little seeds of the positive and we start to build upon that and expand that. And that expansion leads us to the siddhi of superabundance. Love that word, right? Love that word, superabundance. And then spreading that energy around the planet so that everybody has the ability and the possibility of tapping into superabundance. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to actually take you to the human design chart for this day, and sharing my screen here to show that to you. This is a just now chart from Jovian Archive. Jovian has a lot of good information on it. It is rather older human design. So now we're looking at this quantum field and how do we expand upon this beautiful system. But they still have these wonderful charts that you can look at every day to see where the energies are. And if you take your own human design chart and sit it right next to it and compare, any place that's lighted up here that you don't have lighted up in your own chart, you are now suddenly in receipt of that energy. And so themes like, for example, the gate of abundance here, or the gate of money here, this is the money line. And the gate 45 is right now the North Node, where we're going to an equal distribution of funds in an equal manner. So we are beginning to share prosperity and spread that out across in a more equal way, giving everybody equal access. This is the lesson, right? This is the North Node pushing us in this direction. And it's based on the South Node here, that if you don't have this gate defined, suddenly now you do, which is the gate that talks about lying, cheating, stealing, corruption in some respects, but is a call for us to engage integrity, to come back to our truth, to come back to the truth, right? Together, these two are making up our North Node and our South Node. And so we're having to build on what likely has been a lack of transparency, a lack of the truth, or disclarity around the truth, so that we can become more in integrity. We are with this energy now through February. The sun is sitting down here at the gate 54. Here we see it right on the root center, pushing out toward the spleen in what is going to connect to, if you have the gate 32 hanging, would be the gate of success or failure. The fear is that I'm going to fail, but the energy is about success. The whole channel here can become a channel of workaholicism, of pushing. And what was the lesson here? Divine inspiration, and letting divine inspiration be the source for the movement you take, and not forcing things. And then the gate 53 right next to it here, leading up to the sacral, the gate of starting something new. And we also have other planets now, Saturn and Jupiter, right here, sitting at the gate 41, which is the initiating gate to the human design year coming up on the 19th or on the 22nd of January. And that starts our new year with imagination. So the gate 41 right now asks us to imagine something better, imagine something more, and then take it out and build it in the world. If you build it, they will come, kind of thing, right? If you leave it all up here, it just is in the negative and it's fantasy. It's a fantasy. It isn't real. It isn't real until you bring it out of the mind and down into some form of practical application. So the 41 teaching us a lot now in terms of bringing things. I think we have for too long thought we weren't really creating anything when we would think negatively. But when we're focusing on what's negative, we are as culpable in what it produces as the people that actually go out and do what it is that you've been thinking about. So just a little hint there, if you're focusing on all the negative, then we're energizing the negative. But if you're focusing on the positive or what more is possible, an infinite amount of imaginative energy that we have to take out and bring to bear in the world, even if it's just in our thoughts in the beginning, it leads us to being able to take the next steps. And that's what the 41 is all about. And that we're going to be looking at in the next week or two as well for the sun. So there's our human design chart. We see we have a connection. Right now, this would make everybody sort of feeling like generators, as the root is connected to the sacral via the channel of transmutation, the channel of change, of becoming adaptable to new circumstances. This is hugely responsible for these big transformative energies that are upon us. And that's made up of Mars at the gate 3 right now, and which is seeing the more immature aspect of what more is possible. And then the gate 60, which is Mercury, which is in a gate of limitation, accepting where we are so that we can start to build on where we want to go. So it's an interesting combination of energies there. Okay, so let's do a card, shall we? Any suggestions from the gallery out there on what card we want to see for the community? I've lost myself here. There we go. Lost myself. Tom, I have a feeling you're singing a song here. Accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and don't you mess with Mr. In Between. Is that a song? J-Lo, how could I use gate 41 if I have it with the sun in my design? How do you use it at any time, right? You use it by bringing your imagination into reality, right? Bringing it down, anchoring it onto the planet, really taking a check of what are your actions, right? That the 41, remember, sits on the root center. It is a sign, a gate of perseverance. There's energy there for endurance. But is the endurance that you're just keeping all of these ideas up here in your head and never really, someday I want to do this. Someday I'm going to be that. Someday I'm going to go there. And how long has that relative energy been stuck up here? Now it's time for you to bring it down here, because the line 3 is an experiential line. That means it's no good if you don't experience, right? You have to bring it into experience, even if it isn't exactly the kind of experience that turns out positive. To experience is better than to not experience. Tom says an animal card. Tom, I'm with you. I like the animals in those cases. And a galactic heritage card called out when I looked down. So let's get an animal card that is going to represent humanity as we go into the weekend, right? Our animal guide, if we will. Looking at how does a totem help us get to where, love it. Butterfly spirit, transformation is beautiful, card number 11. However, it came out upside down. So we have a protection message, but look at that. I don't think we have ever drawn this card. Transformation is beautiful. All right, let's see what that means. Card number 11. So we have enlightenment. The number 11 brings the light. In human design, the gate 11 is even the gate of light. So it represents enlightenment moving up. The protection message says, transformation does not have to be as traumatic or dramatic as things may seem to be right now. Remember, change is the only true constant. When you resist it, you create a tension within you as you refuse to accept the inevitable. In this moment, you might have forgotten the beauty and joy of life as it moves through its seasons, as nature dictates. You are being faced with a choice now. You can struggle with the current conditions, refusing to surrender and see through the lens of lack and loss, or you can surrender to the grace that is calling you to allow life to take its course, moving through the sadness and the disappointment. Surrender will soften you, inviting you to bask in gratitude and see through the lens of curiosity. These are the keys to tuning into the infinite potential available to you right now. Butterfly Spirit knows the beauty and delight that you are on the brink of discovering. Let go and trust that it is there for you. It's funny how the cards always seem to tune in to exactly what it is that we are experiencing or what it is that we need to know in order to move on through some very chaotic experiences. Let's take a look at what our galactic friends say about this. What more is possible as we look through the lens of the Galactic Heritage cards? This is a deck by Lissa Royal Holt, and it's very profound. Ooh, community. And this says the Association of Worlds. Oh, this is lovely. Look at that. If you just take a moment and look at there, what you see is a lot of symbols of duality, right? Little symbols that there are two of, and just a little bit of differences in them, but they're different. So it's the Association of Worlds. It's a parallel universe to what we're experiencing here. The card is called Community. And it almost looks like that's all coming out of a spider web or some kind of webbing. Let's see here. Number 96. So 96 would be a 6. Matches our Pleiadian Earth energy of the day, which is 6 flow. Flowing with enlightenment, which is the energy of the Pleiadian calendar today, which I didn't get to. Okay, 96 community. The Association of Worlds is a unified group that includes many extraterrestrial and interdimensional species who have joined together as representatives of the galactic community. They have worked with humans for a very long time and look forward to the day when Earth people are included in this group. They represent equality, balance, and loving service. You pulled this card because you have a connection to this group that is positively affecting your life today. This card stresses the importance of building community on Earth, which prepares us for joining the community of the stars. This card refers to a unified group of ET species who formed a community millennia ago for the purpose of introducing awakening planets to the galactic family. This group is known by many names. From the perspective of an evolved species, there is no such thing as hierarchy or government in the way we define them on Earth. Thus, this group is a consortium of beings who work harmoniously together, but do not enforce or make rules to live by. At their level of consciousness, such constraints are unnecessary. If you pulled this card, that means you have a connection to this group and are working with them consciously or unconsciously. It may also refer to your ability or desire to create a community of like-minded beings on Earth. It could also refer to a community you are already part of and how it either needs to or will go through a powerful transformation away from hierarchy. On a planetary level, this card also refers to the community of Earth humans who, even though they may not be aware of it, they are part of such a community, are just now beginning to awaken to the unity of life. This message may also be for you to begin recognizing yourself as part of this community. Intuitively feel the specific interpretation of this message deep within you and trust that guidance. How can you apply the lessons of community to your current life circumstances? I might have to sit with that one for a little bit and see what that means. There's something deeper there that I want to think about for a while. All right, Well, that is it for me today. I hope you all have a spectacular weekend. I will be back on Monday to look ahead at the week's energies. Take care, everybody. Blessings to all of you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, Asa, for being in the background there. Talk to you all later.